The rain drummed against the apartment windows as Eugene Alvarez stood frozen in the doorway, his backpack still clutched in one hand, his heart hammering against his ribs as he stared at Benjamin Gutierrez across the small living room. The words that had just tumbled from Benjamin's lips hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross, yet neither could ignore. Quote zero, Benjamin repeated softly, his voice barely audible over the storm outside. Quote one, Eugene felt the world tilt on its axis. The backpack slipped from his fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a dull thud that seemed to echo through the sudden silence. He had come here to pick up his things, to finally put distance between himself and the confusion that had been eating him alive for months. Instead, he found himself taking a step forward, then another, drawn by the vulnerability in Benjamin's dark eyes. Benjamin, Eugene whispered, and the name felt different on his tongue now, weighted with possibility and terror in equal measure. Benjamin's hands were shaking as he reached up to cup Eugene's face, thumbs brushing across the sharp angles of his cheekbones. I've been thinking about kissing you, he confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. For weeks now, maybe longer. I can't sleep, I can't think about anything else. And I don't know what that means, but I know I can't pretend anymore. The electricity between them crackled like the lightning outside, and Eugene felt himself leaning into Benjamin's touch, his eyes fluttering closed. Benjamin asked, his breath warm against Eugene's lips. Eugene's answer was barely a whisper. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like a question being asked. But as Benjamin's lips moved against his, as Eugene's hands found their way to Benjamin's waist, something ignited between them. The kiss deepened, became more certain, more desperate, as if they were both drowning and had finally found air. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together, Eugene felt tears he hadn't realized he was crying slide down his cheeks. Quote 7. Benjamin breathed, his thumb catching one of Eugene's tears. That felt right, Eugene finished, his voice rough with emotion. That felt right. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you're watching from and hype this video in the comments. This story is about to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. But to understand how they arrived at this moment, how Eugene Alvarez went from picking up his backpack to confessing feelings he'd buried for 2 years, we need to go back to the beginning. 3 months earlier, Eugene had been sitting in the same living room, watching Benjamin pace back and forth in front of the couch, his dark hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Benjamin was talking about his girlfriend again, about how something felt missing, how he felt like he was playing a role in his own life. Quote 11, Benjamin had said, collapsing onto the couch next to Eugene with a frustrated sigh. Quote 12, Eugene had nodded sympathetically, offering the same supportive words he'd been giving for months, all while his heart twisted like a knife in his chest. He'd been in love with Benjamin for 2 years and 4 months. Not that he was counting. He'd memorized every expression that crossed Benjamin's face, cataloged every laugh, every frustrated gesture, every moment of vulnerability. Quote 13, Eugene had suggested, hating himself for the lie even as he spoke it. What he wanted to say was that maybe Benjamin was looking for something different entirely. Someone different. Someone like him. But Eugene had learned to be the perfect friend, the supportive confidant who listened to relationship troubles and offered advice, never letting on that every word about Lauren felt like another nail in the coffin of his hopes. That night, after Benjamin had finally gone to bed, Eugene had sat alone on the couch, staring at the spot where Benjamin had been sitting, still able to smell his cologne in the air. He'd pulled out his phone and started typing a dozen different messages, ways to tell Benjamin how he felt, ways to ask if he'd ever considered that maybe what was missing wasn't a different woman, but a different kind of love entirely. He'd deleted every single one. The pattern had continued for weeks. Benjamin would come home from dates with Lauren, frustrated and confused, seeking Eugene out for conversations that stretched late into the night. They'd sit on this couch, sometimes so close their knees touched, and Benjamin would talk about feeling disconnected, about going through the motions of a relationship that should have felt perfect, but somehow didn't. When Benjamin had confessed one particularly difficult night, his voice small in the darkness of the living room. Quote 15, Eugene's heart had ached for him then, watching the self-doubt eat away at someone who was so vibrant, so full of life in every other aspect of his existence. He'd wanted to reach out, to take Benjamin's hand and tell him that there was nothing broken about questioning, about not fitting into the boxes society expected him to fill. Instead, made tea and listened, offering gentle reassurance while his own feelings remained locked away. The breaking point had come on a Tuesday evening in late October. Eugene had been grading papers at the kitchen table when Benjamin burst through the front door, his face flushed with cold and something that looked like panic. Quote 16, Benjamin announced without preamble, dropping his keys on the counter with shaking hands. Eugene looked up from his papers, his pen frozen halfway through writing a comment. Benjamin ran both hands through his hair, a gesture Eugene had come to recognize as his tell for when he was overwhelmed. Quote 18, he said quietly. Quote 19, he trailed off, moving to lean against the kitchen counter, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Quote 20, and Benjamin continued. Quote 21, Eugene set down his pen carefully, giving Benjamin his full attention. Quote 21, quote 23, Benjamin admitted, and then looked surprised at his own honesty. But 21, and quote 20, Eugene said softly. Quote Benjamin nodded, then moved to sit across from Eugene at the small kitchen table. Quote Eugene's heart rate picked up, but he kept his expression neutral. Of course, Theron. Have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life? Like you were following a script that didn't quite fit? The question hung between them, loaded with implications that Eugene wasn't sure Benjamin was even aware of. He considered his answer carefully, weighing honesty against self-preservation. Quote 30, Eugene said finally. Quote 30, Benjamin studied Eugene's face in the warm light of the kitchen lamp, and Eugene felt exposed, as if Benjamin could see straight through to all the feelings he'd been hiding. Quote 32, Benjamin asked quietly. Quote 30, Eugene's breath caught in his throat. The question felt dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff and being asked if he wanted to jump. I don't know, he lied. I'm still figuring that out. But Benjamin didn't look away, didn't let him off the hook that easily. Come on, Eugene, you must have some idea. What would make you happy? Really, truly happy. The words were right there, balanced on the tip of Eugene's tongue. You would make me happy. Being with you, being able to touch you, being able to tell you how I feel. But instead of speaking them, he stood up abruptly, gathering his papers. Quote 37, he said, not meeting Benjamin's eyes. It's been a long day for you. He was almost to his bedroom door when Benjamin's voice stopped him. Quote 39, he turned back reluctantly. Quote 40, Eugene managed a smile that he hoped looked genuine. Quote 41, but as he closed his bedroom door behind him, Eugene leaned against it and let out a shaky breath. The word friends felt like a prison sentence, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could serve it. The weeks following Benjamin's breakup with Lauren were both the best and worst of Eugene's life. Best because Benjamin was finally free, finally present in a way he hadn't been for months. Worse because that freedom came with a new kind of intimacy that was slowly driving Eugene insane. Without the distraction of his relationship, Benjamin seemed to seek out Eugene's company constantly. They cooked dinner together, watched movies sprawled across the couch, took long walks through the city talking about everything and nothing. It was everything Eugene had ever wanted, except for the one thing he wanted most. Benjamin had also become more physically affectionate, in small ways that Eugene told himself meant nothing but that set his nerves on fire nonetheless. A hand on his shoulder when Benjamin passed behind him in the kitchen, fingers brushing when they reached for the same thing. Benjamin unconsciously moving closer during their movie nights until their thighs pressed together on the couch. Eugene cataloged every touch like a man dying of thirst catalogs drops of water, even as he told himself he was reading too much into innocent gestures of friendship. The first crack in his careful composure came during one of their late-night conversations. They'd been talking about college, about the people they'd been then versus who they were now, when Benjamin had gone quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you something weird? Benjamin had asked, his voice soft in the darkness of the living room. Sure, Eugene had replied, though his heart was already racing. I've been having these dreams, Benjamin said, not looking at Eugene, about kissing someone, But it's never Lauren or any woman I can recognize. It's always this person whose face I can't quite see, but in the dream it feels more real than any kiss I've ever had while awake. Eugene's mouth had gone dry. Quote, Almond Forson, quote 40 Simone. Benjamin insisted, finally turning to look at Eugene. Quote 40 dim. Eugene had stared at Benjamin in the dim light filtering in from the street, wondering if he was imagining the weight behind his words. The way Benjamin's gaze seemed to linger on his lips for just a moment too long. Maybe Eugenia had said carefully, your subconscious is trying to tell you something about what you really want. Maybe, Benjamin had agreed quietly, but he didn't elaborate, and Eugene hadn't had the courage to push. That conversation had been the first of many that danced around the edges of something neither of them seemed ready to name. Benjamin started asking hypothetical questions that felt anything but hypothetical. Do you think sexuality is fixed? He'd asked one evening while they were making dinner. Quote 53, quote arm, he'd asked another night, the question seemingly coming out of nowhere as they walked home from a movie. Do you think love is about gender or about the person? He'd wondered aloud during one of their couch conversations, his fingers absently tracing patterns on Eugene's arm. Each question felt like a test, like Benjamin was trying to gauge Eugene's reactions. But Eugene had become an expert at keeping his responses neutral, supportive but not revealing. He encouraged Benjamin's self-exploration while carefully hiding his own desperate hope that these questions meant what he thought they might mean. The breaking point came on a Friday night in November. Benjamin had been unusually quiet all evening, distracted during dinner and restless during the movie they'd attempted to watch. Finally, he turned off the television and turned to face Eugene fully on the couch. I need to ask you something, Benjamin said, his voice serious, and I need you to be honest with me. Eugene's heart hammered against his ribs. Quote 59. This question hit Eugene like a physical blow. He stared at Benjamin, searching his face for any hint of what he wanted to hear, what he was hoping Eugene would say. Quote 60. Eugene said slowly, choosing his words carefully. Quote 61. Benjamin nodded, but Eugene could see the frustration in his expression. Quote Benjamin said, leaning forward. Quote Eugene felt trapped, caught between his desire to help Benjamin and his need to protect himself. Quote on, Benjamin said simply. Quote all, and the words hung between them, heavy with implication, and Eugene felt his careful walls beginning to crumble. Quote 69, he said quietly. Quote 70. Quote 71. It wasn't a question, and Eugene found himself nodding slowly. Yes, I have thoughts. Tell me. Eugene closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opened them again, Benjamin was watching him with an intensity that made Eugene's pulse race. Bunniper, Eugene said carefully, quote, Benjamin was quiet for a long moment, absorbing Eugene's words. And what do you think I'm afraid to admit? Eugene's heart was beating so hard he was sure Benjamin could hear it. Quote 77. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Benjamin's eyes searched Eugene's face, and Eugene felt exposed, as if every feeling he'd been hiding was written across his features. Eugene, Benjamin said softly, can I ask you one more question? Eugene nodded, not trusting his voice. Have you ever thought about kissing me? The question hit Eugene like lightning, illuminating everything he'd been hiding in the darkness. He stared at Benjamin, his mouth opening and closing without sound, his carefully constructed walls crumbling to dust. Eugene started, then stopped, his throat closing around the words. Quote 82. Benjamin continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Quote 83. Eugene felt tears prick at his eyes, 2 years of suppressed longing threatening to overwhelm him. Quote, Benjamin shifted closer on the couch, close enough that Eugene could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Quote, son, Eugene said weakly, even as his heart soared at Benjamin's words. Are we? Benjamin asked. Because friends don't usually spend every free moment together. Friends don't usually know exactly how the other person takes their coffee or what makes them laugh when they're sad or how they look when they first wake up in the morning. Eugene's breath hitched. Benjamin continued, his hand moving to rest on Eugene's knee. And they definitely don't usually lie awake at night wondering what it would feel like to hold that person, to kiss them, to tell them how they really feel. How long? Eugene whispered. hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. I don't know, Benjamin admitted. Maybe since we moved in together, maybe longer. I just know that every time I tried to make things work with Lauren or with anyone else, I kept thinking that it should feel like what I have with you. The ease, the connection, the way you make me feel like myself. Eugene was quiet for a long moment, processing Benjamin's confession, hardly daring to hope that this was real. Benjamin said softly, quote 87. Eugene looked up to meet Benjamin's eyes, and the vulnerability he saw there broke something open in his chest. 2 years and 4 months, Eugene said quietly. What? That's how long I've been in love with you, Eugene confessed, his voice shaking. 2 years and 4 months. Since that night you came home drunk from your friend's wedding and told me you wished you could find someone who understood you the way I do. Benjamin's eyes widened. Quote 102, quote 103. The words tumbled out now, unstoppable after being held back for so long. Quote one, Benjamin asked, his voice thick with emotion. Quote one, then, Eugene admitted. Quote one in, Benjamin's hand moved from Eugene's knee to cup his face, thumb brushing across his cheekbone. Quote 108, he whispered. Quote 109. Quote 110, Maud, Eugene breathed, leaning into the touch. Quote 111, Benjamin said, his voice rough with emotion. Quote 101 time. Eugene's answer was barely audible. I've wanted that for so long. Benjamin leaned forward slowly, giving Eugene every opportunity to pull away. But Eugene stayed perfectly still, hardly breathing as Benjamin's lips brushed against his in the softest whisper of a kiss. The contact was electric, sending shockwaves through Eugene's entire body. Benjamin pulled back just enough to look into Eugene's eyes, searching for any sign of hesitation. He asked softly. Eugene whispered. This time when Benjamin kissed him, it was with more certainty, more pressure. Eugene's hands found their way to Benjamin's shirt, fisting in the fabric as he kissed back with 2 years of pent-up longing. Benjamin's arms wrapped around him, pulling him closer, and Eugene felt like he was coming home after a long journey. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Benjamin rested his forehead against Eugene's. Benjamin breathed. Eugene finished, echoing the words that would come months later in this same room. Quote 119, Benjamin agreed, his thumb tracing Eugene's bottom lip. That felt right. They sat there for a moment, foreheads pressed together, both trying to process what had just happened. I'm scared, Benjamin admitted quietly. Me too, Eugene replied, but good scared or bad scared? Benjamin considered the question. Good scared, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing you want to jump. Eugene smiled, the first real smile he'd felt in months. Quote quantify, quote ones, Benjamin said, his voice full of regret. Quote one show and quote one, Eugene said, bringing his hand up to cover Benjamin's, where it still rested against his cheek. You needed time to figure things out. We both did. What happens now? Benjamin asked. It was a question that would hang between them for months, weeks even, as they navigated the shift from friendship to something more. There were conversations to be had about what this meant, about how to move forward, about the fear and excitement of exploring this new dynamic. But in that moment, sitting on their couch with the taste of each other still on their lips, the future felt full of possibility. Now, Eugene said softly, we figure it out together. The days following their first kiss were a delicate dance of discovery and hesitation. Benjamin and Eugene moved around each other with a new awareness, every casual touch now loaded with significance, every conversation carrying an undercurrent of the feelings they'd finally acknowledged. Benjamin had called in sick to work the next day, claiming he needed time to process what had happened. Eugene had found him that morning sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring out the window with an expression of wonder mixed with terror. Quote verse, Eugene had asked carefully, pouring his own coffee and taking the seat across from Benjamin. Quote for a friend, Benjamin replied honestly. Quote for Eugene nodded, understanding the feeling completely. Quote person, quote showing, Benjamin asked, finally looking at Eugene. Quote words to him. Eugene's heart skipped at the casual way Benjamin said in love, as if it was a simple fact rather than the earth-shattering revelation it was. Maybe, Eugene suggested gently, the reason it feels right is because it is right. Maybe all those years of feeling disconnected from your relationships with women were your heart trying to tell you something. Benjamin reached across the table, taking Eugene's hand in his. The simple contact sent warmth shooting up Eugene's arm, and he marveled at how different it felt now that they'd acknowledged what was between them. Quote, Worterdine, Benjamin said, his thumb tracing patterns on Eugene's knuckles. The way I always compared everyone else to you, how I never wanted to move out even when I was dating someone seriously, the way I felt more comfortable with you than I ever did with any girlfriend. You weren't ready to see those signs then, Eugene said softly. There's no point in beating yourself up about it. But you were ready, Benjamin pointed out. You saw it 2 years ago. How did you know? Eugene considered the question, remembering the gradual realization that his feelings for Benjamin were more than friendship. I think it was the little things at first, Eugene said. The way my day felt brighter when you were around. How I looked forward to our conversations more than anything else. The way I felt protective of you, possessive even, when you talked about dating other people. He paused, meeting Benjamin's eyes. Water 49. Quote, Wumptum, Benjamin said quietly. Quote, Wumptum. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands still linked across the table, both processing the magnitude of what they'd discovered. What did we do now? Benjamin asked eventually. It was the same question he'd asked the night before, and Eugene still didn't have a complete answer. I think, Eugene said carefully, we take it slow. This is new for you, and I don't want you to feel pressured or overwhelmed. We figure out what this looks like, what we both want. Benjamin nodded, but Eugene could see the uncertainty in his expression. Are you having second thoughts? Eugene asked, trying to keep his voice neutral despite the fear creeping up his spine. No, Benjamin said quickly. No, not second thoughts. Just, what if I'm bad at this? What if I don't know how to be what you need? Eugene's heart ached at the vulnerability in Benjamin's voice. Benjamin, you have already been what I need for 2 years. The only thing that's changed is that now we both know it. But what about the physical stuff? Benjamin asked, his cheeks flushing slightly. I've never been with a man before. What if I don't know what I'm doing? Eugene squeezed Benjamin's hand reassuringly. Guitar 161. Benjamin visibly relaxed at Eugene's words. You're being very patient with me. I've waited 2 years, Eugene said with a small smile. I can wait a little longer for you to feel comfortable with all of this. I don't want you to wait, Benjamin said, his grip on Eugene's hand tightening. The words sent a warm rush through Eugene's chest. You already do love me that way. You have been, even when neither of us understood what it was. Benjamin stood up then, still holding Eugene's hand, and moved around the table. Eugene turned in his chair to face him, looking up as Benjamin approached. Do 168? Benjamin asked softly. Quote was 69. Eugene's answer was to reach up and cup Benjamin's face, drawing him down for a kiss that was softer than the night before but no less electric. Benjamin's hands settled on Eugene's shoulders, and Eugene could feel some of the tension leave Benjamin's body as they kissed. When they broke apart, Benjamin rested his forehead against Eugene's. Benjamin murmured, making Eugene laugh. Eugene replied, quote 172. They spent the rest of that day in a bubble of cautious exploration. They cooked lunch together, but now Benjamin's hand lingered on Eugene's waist when he moved past him in the kitchen. They watched a movie, but instead of sitting on opposite ends of the couch, Benjamin curled up against Eugene's side, his head on Eugene's shoulder. Every touch was deliberate, conscious in a way their previous casual contact had never been. Eugene found himself hyper-aware of every point where their bodies connected, every brush of fingers, every shared breath. That evening, as they cleaned up after dinner, Benjamin suddenly stopped what he was doing and turned to Eugene. He said, his expression serious. Eugene's heart rate picked up. What is it? I called my sister today. Benjamin said, I told her about us. Eugene blinked in surprise. You did? I needed to tell someone, Benjamin explained, and Marie has always been good at helping me sort through my feelings. I hope that's okay. Of course it's okay, Eugene said quickly. What did she say? Benjamin smiled, the first truly relaxed smile Eugene had seen from him all day. She said it was about time. Apparently she's been waiting for me to figure out what she's known for months. What do you mean? She said she could tell from the way I talked about you that I was in love with you, even when I was dating other people. She said she was wondering when I was going to stop being oblivious and do something about it. Eugene laughed, shaking his head. It's funny how everyone else can see these things before we can see them ourselves. She wants to meet you, Benjamin continued. Officially, I mean. As my boyfriend, not just my roommate. The word boyfriend sent a thrill through Eugene. Even though they hadn't officially discussed labels yet, Eugene asked. Benjamin paused, suddenly looking uncertain. Quote 190 no, quote 191. Eugene said quickly, reaching for Benjamin's hand. I want to be your boyfriend, your partner, whatever you're comfortable calling it. Benjamin's smile was radiant. 23. The transition from friends to boyfriends was surprisingly natural in some ways, and surprisingly complicated in others. The emotional intimacy they'd built over 2 years of friendship translated seamlessly into romantic love, but the physical aspects of their relationship required more navigation. Benjamin approached their physical relationship with the same thoughtful consideration he brought to everything else in his life. He asked questions, communicated his uncertainties, and never pushed himself beyond what felt comfortable. Eugene, for his part, was endlessly patient, understanding that Benjamin was not just learning to be with a man, but learning to be with anyone in a way that felt authentic to who he really was. Their first real kiss as an established couple happened 3 days after their initial confession. They'd been watching a movie, Eugene reading while Benjamin dozed against his shoulder, when Benjamin stirred and looked up at him. Quote 190, Benjamin said softly. Quote 195, Eugene replied, not looking away from his book. Quote 196, that got Eugene's attention. He set his book aside and turned to face Benjamin fully. Properly? The other night was amazing, Benjamin said, his cheeks flushing slightly. But it was also kind of desperate and overwhelming. I want to kiss you when I'm not terrified and emotional. I want to kiss you just because I want to. Eugene's heart melted at the earnestness in Benjamin's voice. I'd like that too. Benjamin shifted on the couch, turning to face Eugene fully. He reached up to cup Eugene's face in his hands, thumbs brushing across his cheekbones. For a moment, they just looked at each other, taking in the reality of what they'd become. I love you, Benjamin said quietly, the words slipping out as naturally as breathing. Eugene's breath caught. They danced around the words for days, but this was the first time either of them had said them directly. I love you too, Eugene replied, his voice thick with emotion. So much. When Benjamin kissed him this time, it was with a reverence that made Eugene's heart race. The kiss was slow, exploratory, as if Benjamin was trying to memorize every sensation. Eugene let Benjamin set the pace, following his lead as the kiss gradually deepened. Benjamin's hands threaded through Eugene's hair, and Eugene felt himself melting into the contact. When Benjamin's tongue brushed against his bottom lip, Eugene opened for him with a soft sound that made Benjamin's breath hitch. They kissed until they were both breathless, until Eugene's hands were fisted in Benjamin's shirt and Benjamin was practically in his lap. When they finally broke apart, both of them were flushed and breathing heavily. Benjamin breathed, his forehead resting against Eugene's. That was, yeah, Eugene agreed, not needing Benjamin to finish the sentence. I'm starting to understand why people write songs about this, Benjamin said, making Eugene laugh. Just starting to? Eugene teased gently. Well, I thought I understood before, Benjamin said, his thumb tracing Eugene's bottom lip. Good 210. They spent the next hour kissing on the couch, learning each other's rhythms, discovering what made the other gasp or sigh. It was innocent but incredibly intimate, a slow exploration that left them both feeling closer than ever. As the weeks passed, their relationship settled into a comfortable rhythm. They were still the same people who had been best friends, but now they could express their affection openly. Benjamin would kiss Eugene goodbye in the mornings before work. Eugene would wrap his arms around Benjamin from behind while he cooked dinner. They held hands during movies, shared lingering kisses in the kitchen, and fell asleep curled around each other most nights. The physical progression of their relationship was gradual and natural. Benjamin was curious and eager to learn, but never pushed himself beyond his comfort zone. Eugene was patient and encouraging, letting Benjamin set the pace while being open about his own desires and experiences. The first time Benjamin initiated anything beyond kissing, they were lying in bed on a Saturday morning, sunlight streaming through the windows. Eugene was reading while Benjamin dozed beside him, but he became aware of Benjamin's gaze on him. "200 even." Eugene asked softly, looking down to find Benjamin watching him with an expression of wonder. Guadohadeno, Benjamin said, reaching up to trace the line of Eugene's jaw. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream. It's real, Eugene assured him, setting his book aside and turning to face Benjamin fully. Benjamin's hand moved to rest on Eugene's chest over his heart. I want to touch you, he said quietly, his cheeks flushing. I want to learn how to make you feel good. Eugene's breath caught at the desire in Benjamin's voice. Are you sure? I'm sure, Benjamin said, his hand already moving lower, exploring the planes of Eugene's chest through his t-shirt. What followed was a slow, tender exploration that left them both shaking with emotion and desire. Benjamin was a careful, attentive lover, paying attention to every sound Eugene made, every reaction he had. Eugene guided him gently, showing him what felt good, encouraging his exploration. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both breathing heavily, Benjamin's head on Eugene's chest. Benjamin murmured against Eugene's skin. You're incredible, Eugene replied, his fingers carding through Benjamin's hair. Quote Fussel, Benjamin said, pressing a kiss to Eugene's chest. So connected, so right. That's what love feels like, Eugene said softly. When you're with the right person. Benjamin lifted his head to look at Eugene, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I can't believe I almost missed this. If I hadn't broken up with Lauren, if I hadn't started questioning everything. But you did, Eugene reminded him. You were brave enough to ask the hard questions, to be honest about what you were feeling. That's what brought us here. I want to tell people, Benjamin said suddenly. I want everyone to know how happy you make me. Eugene's heart swelled at Benjamin's words. Are you ready for that? Coming out is a big step. I'm ready, Benjamin said with conviction. I'm tired of hiding who I am, even if I'm still figuring it out. I know I love you, and I want the world to know it. They started small, telling their closest friends and family members. Benjamin's sister Marie was thrilled, as was Eugene's best friend from college. Their parents had varying reactions, but most were ultimately supportive, wanting their sons to be happy above all else. Coming out at work was more challenging, particularly for Benjamin, who worked in a conservative office environment. But he handled it with the same thoughtful approach he brought to everything else, choosing to be open about his relationship without making it the focus of his professional life. 3 months into their official relationship, Eugene and Benjamin had settled into a domestic bliss that felt both thrilling and completely natural. Their apartment, which had always been a shared space, now felt like a true home. They'd rearranged the furniture to better accommodate their new dynamic, created shared routines, and filled the space with small tokens of their love for each other. Eugene had moved most of his clothes into Benjamin's room, though they still maintained his room as a study and guest space. Waking up next to Benjamin every morning had become Eugene's favorite part of the day, watching the way the morning light played across Benjamin's features, feeling the warmth of his body pressed against his own. Benjamin had thrown himself into learning everything he could about being in a same-sex relationship, reading books, joining online forums, and even attending a support group for people who had come out later in life. His dedication to understanding his new identity and being the best partner he could be never ceased to amaze Eugene. I feel like I'm making up for lost time, Benjamin had explained one evening as he researched local LGBTQ organizations. I want to understand this community, this part of myself that I ignored for so long. Eugene had watched him with admiration, understanding that Benjamin's journey of self-discovery was about more than just their relationship. It was about Benjamin finally allowing himself to be authentic, to embrace all aspects of who he was. Their physical relationship had also continued to evolve. Benjamin's initial nervousness had given way to confidence and enthusiasm. He was an attentive, generous lover who seemed to find genuine joy in discovering what brought Eugene pleasure. Their intimacy was characterized by open communication, patience, and a deep emotional connection that made every physical encounter feel meaningful. One particularly memorable evening, they'd been lying in bed after making love, both still catching their breath, when Benjamin had turned to Eugene with a serious expression. "Bad," Benjamin said, his voice soft in the darkness. Eugene felt a flicker of concern. Benjamin said, his fingers tracing patterns on Eugene's chest. about Lauren and Sarah before her and all the others. And I realize now that I was never really present in any of those relationships. I was always holding back, always keeping part of myself separate. Eugene listened quietly, sensing that Benjamin needed to work through these thoughts. But with you, Benjamin continued, I feel completely present, completely myself. It's like I was sleepwalking through my life before, and now I'm finally awake. I'm glad, Eugene said softly, pressing a kiss to the top of Benjamin's head. De 2 to 43. Quote to Benjamin admitted. Quoted 24, quote on 24, Eugene reminded him gently. Quoted 247, quoted 248, Benjamin said. Quoted 249. Eugene's heart swelled with love for this man who had been brave enough to completely reimagine his life, to embrace a truth that challenged everything he thought he knew about himself. I love you, Eugene said, the words carrying the weight of everything he felt. I love you too, Benjamin replied, more than I ever thought possible. Their relationship wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when Benjamin struggled with internalized homophobia, times when he worried about what others thought or questioned whether he was, quote, 253, to belong in the LGBTQ community. Eugene was always there to reassure him, to remind him that his identity was valid regardless of when he discovered it. There were also practical considerations to navigate. They had to decide whether to stay in their current apartment or find a new place that felt more like theirs rather than a space they'd shared as friends. They had to figure out how to merge their finances, their future plans, their individual goals into a shared vision. But every challenge felt surmountable when they faced it together. Their foundation of friendship, built over years of trust and understanding, provided a solid base for their romantic relationship. They knew how to communicate with each other, how to support each other through difficult times, how to celebrate each other's successes. One evening in late winter, they were cooking dinner together when Benjamin suddenly stopped what he was doing and turned to Eugene. What? Eugene asked, noticing the intense look on Benjamin's face. Quote 256, Benjamin said, his voice serious. Eugene felt his heart rate pick up, wondering what was coming. Quote 257, Benjamin continued. Quote, he paused, seeming to gather his courage. Quote to Bufanan, Benjamin said, the words tumbling out in a rush. Quote Tasum. Eugene stared at Benjamin, his heart pounding with joy and love and overwhelming gratitude for this man who had turned his world upside down in the best possible way. Quote 261, Eugene said, his voice thick with emotion. Quote 2 Serasku. Benjamin's smile was radiant as he crossed the small kitchen to wrap Eugene in his arms. They held each other tightly, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were promising each other. We have time, Eugene said softly. We don't have to figure it all out right now. We can take it one day at a time. I know, Benjamin replied, but I wanted you to know that this isn't just a phase for me or an experiment. This is my life now. You are my life now. Eugene pulled back to look into Benjamin's eyes, seeing his own love and commitment reflected there. Quote 267, Eugene said, quote 268. They kissed then, soft and sweet and full of promise, surrounded by the warmth of their kitchen and the life they were building together. The spring brought new growth in more ways than one. Benjamin had fully embraced his identity as a gay man, joining Eugene at pride events and LGBTQ social gatherings. Eugene watched with pride as Benjamin found his place in the community, making new friends and discovering aspects of himself he'd never had the opportunity to explore. They'd also made the decision to move to a new apartment, wanting a space that belonged to both of them from the beginning. The process of apartment hunting together, of choosing furniture and decorating their new home, felt like another step in cementing their commitment to each other. Their new place was a bright, airy two-bedroom in a neighborhood they both loved. They turned the second bedroom into a shared office space, with desks positioned so they could work side by side when needed. The living room featured a large, comfortable couch where they could continue their tradition of evening conversations and movie nights. Benjamin had insisted on a large kitchen, claiming he wanted to learn to cook more elaborate meals for Eugene. Eugene had watched with amusement as Benjamin threw himself into cooking, with the same dedication he'd brought to understanding his sexuality, buying cookbooks and watching online tutorials until he could produce restaurant-quality meals. You don't have to do all this, Eugene had said one evening, watching Benjamin prepare an elaborate dinner. I fell in love with you when you could barely make toast. I want to, Benjamin had replied, not looking up from his careful knife work. I want to take care of you the way you've taken care of me. You do take care of me, Eugene had assured him. Every day. Not the way you deserve, Benjamin said, finally looking up. You were so patient with me, Eugene. Eugene, you waited for me to figure myself out. You held my hand through all my confusion and fear. You never made me feel rushed or pressured. I want to spend the rest of our lives making sure you know how grateful I am for that. Eugene had crossed the kitchen to wrap his arms around Benjamin from behind, pressing a kiss to his neck. You don't owe me anything, Eugene said softly. Love isn't a debt to be repaid. It's a gift we give each other freely. I know, Benjamin said, leaning back into Eugene's embrace. Quote 280. Their first year together flew by in a blur of happiness and discovery. They traveled together, taking a trip to Europe, where they could be openly affectionate without worrying about judgment from people they knew. They attended Benjamin's sister's wedding, where Eugene was introduced as Benjamin's boyfriend to extended family members who had never met him before. They weathered their first real fight, a disagreement about finances that escalated into a larger conversation about their different approaches to planning and security. But even their fight felt different from conflicts in previous relationships, characterized by honest communication rather than defensive posturing. They worked through their differences and emerged stronger, with a better understanding of each other's perspectives. Eugene's favorite memory from that first year was a quiet Sunday morning in their new apartment. They'd slept in late, made pancakes together, and spent the afternoon reading on their couch, Benjamin's head in Eugene's lap while Eugene absently played with his hair. Quote 281, Benjamin had murmured, not looking up from his book. Quote 282, Eugene had asked. Quote 281, Benjamin had set his book aside and looked up at Eugene. Quote 200, quote Tommy, Eugene had replied, leaning down to kiss Benjamin's forehead. I'm never going to take this for granted, Benjamin had said seriously. I'm never going to forget how lucky I am to have found you. We found each other, Eugene had corrected gently. And we chose each other. Every day, we keep choosing each other. As their second year together began, they started having more serious conversations about their future. Benjamin had been offered a promotion at work that would require occasional travel, and they had to decide whether the opportunity was worth the time apart. Eugene had been considering going back to school for his master's degree, and they discussed the financial implications and how they would manage his reduced income during his studies. These conversations felt natural, like the logical progression of a partnership that had grown from friendship into something deeper and more committed. They made decisions together, considering each other's dreams and goals, finding ways to support each other's individual growth while strengthening their bond as a couple. The topic of marriage came up gradually, mentioned in passing during conversations about friends' weddings or legal benefits. Neither of them felt the need to rush toward an engagement, but they both understood that marriage was in their future, a formal recognition of the commitment they'd already made to each other. Quote 299. Benjamin had said one evening as they walked through their neighborhood after dinner. Quote 21, Eugene had teased. Quote 21, quote 20, Benjamin had clarified, squeezing Eugene's hand. When we've been together long enough that it feels like a celebration rather than a promise. When marriage feels like the next natural step rather than something we're doing because we think we should. Eugene had understood exactly what Benjamin meant. Their relationship had always progressed at its own pace, guided by their feelings rather than external expectations. Marriage would happen when it felt right, not according to any timeline imposed by others. I want to marry you too, Eugenia had said, when the time is right. Good, Benjamin had replied with a grin, because I'm already planning the proposal. You are not, Eugene had laughed. I am, Benjamin had insisted. I've been thinking about it for months. I have ideas. Eugene had shaken his head in amazement, still sometimes surprised by the depth of Benjamin's commitment to their relationship, his enthusiasm for their shared future. Quote 302, Eugene had warned. Quote 3R, quote Farman, Benjamin had promised. Quote 30, the proposal came on a Tuesday evening in October, almost exactly 2 years after their first kiss. Eugene had been expecting something dramatic, knowing Benjamin's tendency toward grand gestures, So he was completely caught off guard when it happened in the most ordinary of circumstances. They'd been cleaning up after dinner, moving around their kitchen in the comfortable choreography they'd developed over months of shared domestic life. Eugene was loading the dishwasher while Benjamin wiped down the counters, both of them chatting about their days, when Benjamin suddenly went quiet. Eugene looked up to find Benjamin watching him with an expression of such intense love that it took his breath away. "What?" Eugene asked, straightening up from the dishwasher. "I love watching you do ordinary things," Benjamin said softly. "I love the way you stack the dishes so carefully, the way you hum under your breath when you are concentrating. I love that this is my life now, getting to see these little moments that no one else gets to see." Eugene felt his cheeks warm at the unexpected tenderness in Benjamin's voice. Jot 309 to quote 310, Benjamin continued, moving closer. Quote 311, quote 312, Eugene asked, though he was smiling at Benjamin's catalog of his habits. "I've been thinking about how much I love our ordinary life together," Benjamin said, reaching into his pocket. "How much I love the everyday moments, the quiet mornings and the comfortable evenings. And I realize that I want to spend the rest of my life collecting these moments with you." Eugene's breath caught as Benjamin pulled out a small velvet box. Quote 315. Benjamin said, dropping to one knee right there in their kitchen. Quote, Eugene stared down at Benjamin, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The ring was simple and perfect. Exactly what Eugene would have chosen for himself if he'd been asked. "Yes," Eugene whispered. Then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." Benjamin's smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto Eugene's finger with shaking hands. Eugene pulled him up for a kiss that was desperate and joyful and full of tears. They were both suddenly crying. "I can't believe you proposed while I was loading the dishwasher," Eugene laughed through his tears. "It was perfect," Benjamin insisted, holding Eugene's face in his hands. Quote 321, quote 322C, Eugene said, his voice thick with emotion. Quote 343. Benjamin replied, quote 3. They called their families that night, sharing their joy with parents and siblings who had watched their love story unfold. Benjamin's sister Marie cried when they told her, claiming she'd been waiting for this moment since Benjamin had first mentioned Eugene 2 years earlier. Eugene's parents, who had initially struggled with their son's sexuality, had grown to love Benjamin like their own child. His mother cried when they shared the news, telling them how happy she was that Eugene had found someone who loved him so completely. Quote 325. She asked, already making plans. Quote 326. Eugene admitted, looking at Benjamin. Quote 327, Benjamin said firmly. Quote 328. They decided on a small ceremony the following spring, wanting something intimate rather than elaborate. The planning process was surprisingly smooth, both of them agreeing on most details without much discussion. They wanted their closest friends and family, good food, and a celebration that reflected their personalities and their love story. Benjamin insisted on writing his own vows, spending weeks crafting words that would capture everything he felt for Eugene. Eugene, more practical by nature, initially planned to use traditional vows, but Benjamin convinced him that their love story deserved words that were uniquely theirs. The months leading up to their wedding were filled with growing anticipation. They took dance lessons, despite both claiming to be terrible dancers, because Benjamin wanted their first dance as husbands to be special. They tasted cakes and chose flowers and sent invitations. But more than anything, they simply enjoyed being engaged, wearing their rings as visible symbols of their commitment to each other. Eugene found himself playing with his engagement ring constantly, still amazed that this was his life, that he got to marry the man he'd loved for so long. Benjamin was equally smitten, frequently reaching for Eugene's hand just to feel the ring there, solid proof that Eugene had chosen him back. Their wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring morning that felt like a blessing on their union. Eugene woke up in their bed next to Benjamin, both of them having decided that spending their last night as fiancés apart was a tradition they didn't need to follow. "Good morning, husband-to-be," Benjamin murmured, pressing a kiss to Eugene's shoulder. "Cool in the arm," Eugene replied, turning in Benjamin's arms. "How are you feeling?" "Perfect," Benjamin said without hesitation. "Like everything in my life has been leading to this moment." No nerves? Eugene asked, studying Benjamin's face. Quote, Uptharo, Benjamin confirmed. Quote, Swish. The ceremony itself was everything they'd hoped for. Held in a small garden venue surrounded by their closest friends and family, it felt intimate and meaningful. Eugene's hands shook as he slipped Benjamin's wedding ring onto his finger, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were promising each other. Benjamin's vows were beautiful and heartfelt, bringing tears to the eyes of everyone present. He spoke about finding himself through loving Eugene, about the courage it had taken to embrace his authentic self, about the joy of building a life with his best friend and greatest love. Eugene's vows were simpler, but no less emotional, focusing on the gratitude he felt for Benjamin's love, the way Benjamin had transformed his understanding of what happiness could look like, the excitement he felt about their future together. When the officiant pronounced them married, the kiss they shared felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure all at once. They were surrounded by cheers and applause, but Eugene felt like they were the only two people in the world. Their honeymoon was a week in a cabin in the mountains, far from the distractions of work and daily life. They spent their days hiking and reading, cooking elaborate meals together, and making love with the unhurried passion of newlyweds. It was exactly what they both needed after the excitement of the wedding, a chance to simply be together and absorb the reality of their new status as husbands. Quote 337 Shaum, Benjamin said one morning as they sat on the cabin's porch with their coffee, watching the sunrise over the mountains. You can, Eugene pointed out with a smile. That's what I am now. I know, but it still feels surreal, Benjamin said, reaching for Eugene's hand. Quote 341, quote 342, Eugene assured him, intertwining their fingers. Quote 343, quote 3, Benjamin repeated as if testing the words. Quote 345. They returned from their honeymoon to their apartment, which somehow felt different now that they were married. The same space, the same furniture, the same routines, but everything imbued with a new sense of permanence and commitment. Their first year of marriage was an adjustment in ways they hadn't expected. Not because anything was wrong, but because being married felt different from being engaged or dating. There was a weight to their commitment now, a legal and emotional binding that changed the way they thought about their future. They had their first serious discussion about children 6 months after their wedding. It started as a casual conversation about their friends who were trying to adopt, but quickly became a deeper exploration of their own desires and fears about parenthood. I think I want kids, Benjamin said one evening as they were getting ready for bed. Not right away, but someday. I want to raise children with you. Eugene paused in brushing his teeth, considering Benjamin's words. Quote 348, he said finally. Quote Aforden, quote Aranon, Benjamin asked, sitting on the edge of their bed. Quote Aranon, Eugene admitted. Quote Afron, quote Shan, Benjamin said with certainty. Quote Harfun, quote quote Shas, Benjamin said, reaching for Eugene's hand as he joined him on the bed. But we have time to figure it out. We don't have to decide anything right now. They spent the next several months researching their options, attending information sessions about adoption and surrogacy. The process was daunting, but they approached it the same way they approached everything else in their relationship, together with open communication and mutual support. In the end, they decided to wait another year before starting the formal process of adoption. They wanted to enjoy being newlyweds, to travel together and solidify their financial situation before taking on the responsibility of parenthood. Their second wedding anniversary was celebrated quietly, just the two of them at their favorite restaurant. They exchanged gifts and reminisced about their wedding day, marveling at how much their life had changed and grown in just 2 years. Do you ever miss it? Eugene asked over dessert. Being single, having complete freedom to make decisions just for yourself? Benjamin considered the question seriously. No, he said finally. I don't miss being single because I was never really single when I was single, if that makes sense. I was always looking for something, always feeling like something was missing. With you, I feel complete. Even when I leave my socks on the bedroom floor, Eugene teased. Even then, Benjamin laughed, though I reserve the right to complain about the socks. Fair enough, Eugene agreed, reaching across the table to take Benjamin's hand. Benjamin replied, his thumb brushing across Eugene's wedding ring. As they walked home from dinner, hand in hand through the city streets, Eugene reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From friends to lovers to husbands, their relationship had evolved and deepened in ways he never could have imagined when he first fell in love with Benjamin all those years ago. "What are you thinking about?" Benjamin asked, noticing Eugene's contemplative mood. Quote 369, Eugene said. Quote 370, quote 371, Benjamin agreed. Quote 370, quote 373, Eugene said. Quote 370, quote 37, Benjamin said, squeezing Eugene's hand, "Because I'm not letting you go." They reached their apartment building, but neither of them made a move toward the door. Instead, they stood on the sidewalk, holding hands and looking up at the windows of their home. "I have something to tell you," Benjamin said suddenly, his voice serious. Eugene felt a flicker of concern. "What is it?" "I called the adoption agency yesterday," Benjamin said, his eyes bright with excitement. "I scheduled our initial consultation for next month." Eugene stared at Benjamin, his heart pounding with excitement and terror. "You did?" "I know we said we'd wait another year," Benjamin said quickly, "but I keep thinking about having a family with you, and I realized I don't want to wait anymore. I want to start the process now, even if it takes a while." Eugene felt tears prick at his eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Benjamin said, cupping Eugene's face in his hands. About 386 and quote 387. Eugene whispered, then louder. Quote, Benjamin's smile was radiant as he pulled Eugene into a kiss right there on the sidewalk, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. And so we returned to where we began, to that rainy evening when Eugene had come to pick up his backpack, but ended up staying for the rest of his life. As they stood in their living room, foreheads pressed together after their first kiss, neither of them could have imagined the beautiful life they would build together. 3 years later, they were the parents of a beautiful daughter named Sophia, adopted as an infant and loved beyond measure. Their apartment had been transformed once again, filled with toys and books and all the wonderful chaos that comes with raising a child. Eugene often thought about that moment when he dropped his backpack, when Benjamin had confessed his feelings and changed both of their lives forever. He thought about all the small decisions that had led them to that point, all the moments of courage and vulnerability that had allowed their love to flourish. Benjamin had never stopped being amazed by the life they'd created together. He would watch Eugene reading bedtime stories to Sophia, or see him patiently helping her with a puzzle, and feel overwhelmed with gratitude for the family they'd become. Quote 389, Benjamin asked one evening as they sat on their mamma, Sophia finally asleep in her room. Quote 389, Eugene asked, though he knew exactly what Benjamin meant. Quote 391, Eugene considered the question. Quote 392, quote Asharshin, quote Bar, Eugene said, echoing Benjamin's words from years earlier. Some things are just meant to be. Some people are just meant to find each other. Benjamin smiled, the same radiant smile that had captured Eugene's heart all those years ago. Quote Dosa, Eugene said, leaning over to kiss his husband softly. Quote 398, quote 399, Benjamin corrected, gesturing towards Sophia's room. With us, Eugene agreed, his heart full to bursting with love for his family. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts about the journey that had brought them to this perfect, ordinary evening. Outside, it was raining again, just as it had been that night when everything changed. But inside their home, surrounded by the life they'd built together, everything was warm and bright and exactly as it should be. Quote 401, Benjamin said softly, the words carrying the weight of all their shared history, all their hopes for the future. Quote 402, Eugene replied, and knew that he would keep saying those words. Keep choosing this man for the rest of their lives. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the simplest moments. A backpack left behind, a conversation that runs longer than expected, the courage to finally speak the truth that's been hiding in your heart. Eugene and Benjamin's story proves that love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks and grand gestures. Sometimes it whispers in the quiet moments, in the space between words, in the decision to stay when you could easily leave. Their love story reminds us that the best relationships are built on friendship, nurtured with patience, and strengthened by the courage to be vulnerable with another person. It shows us that it's never too late to discover new truths about yourself, to embrace a different path than the one you thought you were meant to walk. Most importantly, their story teaches us that love is a choice we make every day, a commitment to see and accept another person fully, to build a life together one ordinary moment at a time. In a world that often tells us love should be complicated and dramatic, Eugene and Benjamin found something better, a love that was simple, honest, and true. And it all started with a backpack, a rainy evening, and two people brave enough to finally tell each other the truth.